Hello and welcome back to the Sports Ranter. We are your hosts, Drew, Jake, and Ben. We want to say thank you for joining us this season. It's been a long haul, and we have completed the regular season for fantasy football 2023. And I like to be the first to apologize to all of our viewers, million viewers, for featuring our league and not even making the playoffs. Okay, and so we want to share that here real quick. We want to screen share the final standings of what happened. All right, and we can discuss. Um, right there, we're all kind of in the middle of the pack. There it is. Andrew, Ben, and Jake sitting at 7, 8, and 9, just out of the playoffs. Well, Nick, who couldn't join us today, lands a bye week, and all his brothers are in the damn division. Maybe it's a Raider conspiracy. I don't know what you guys think, but this is how the league ended this year, and so things happen. But I wanted to ask you guys, after everything that happened this year, with all the picks and things that are happening, what is it that you learned? We'll cover over kind of the fantasy dogs this year and who we think are the best value picks. But I wanted to ask you guys, Drew, after what happened with you, Jake, after the situations of this year. What did you learn? What did you bring in that you learned from this year that you can bring in to next year? Jake, start us off.
First off, I had the number one overall pick. I took Justin Jefferson. People that obviously took, some of those guys that got hurt or just busted. We have to accept first off that this is fantasy football. There are things that are out of our control that we just simply can't. You can't foresee that. When you take the 1-1 with Justin Jefferson and through week 5 as he was playing, I was in the hunt. I was fighting between first and second place in my division. My points scored were up in the top tier and all that stuff. And obviously you lose that player. And you're waiting 24 players, on the snake around to get your next pick. It's going to hurt. It's going to affect you. So don't be discouraged by injuries and, fantasy football sucks. It just happens. That's the gamble. I haven't, in my league, I haven't had to, knock on wood, goddamn, but, I'm in the playoffs. I had not had to deal with injuries. One injury with Austin Eckler, CeeDee Lamb, DK Metcalf, Montgomery had a few, but it just happens. The other thing is I had already been leaned over the side of the fence where in PPR and even half PPR, I'm receiver heavy. I'm over these running backs. I'm over this thing where you need to get these running backs and stuff like that. But I have now even moved in my standard league where you can find running backs, in the later rounds. It's just the way the NFL is now. If you look at the standings, I'm looking in, and this is a PPR league, but Raheem Mostert's number 2, Rashid White's number 4, Alvin Kamara, who had a 3-game suspension, is the number 5 running back in our PPR league, in Nick's league, and then Kyron Williams is 10. It's like you can find value in later rounds if you just put a little bit of research into kind of the systems and things like that. But the NFL has definitely moved into the passing game, and receivers are going to be. I don't think this is any secret. I think a lot of people are going to be doing this, moving forward. But I'm targeting receivers if you're in any kind of PPR league at all.
Fantastic. I would agree. Drew, you started off taking early. You took Devontae Adams, but then you took Garrett Wilson and also Jonathan Taylor. And you got hit quick, right? Within a few minutes of the Jets game, and then also with Jonathan Taylor news. And so you still salvaged to make it happen. So like I said, what happened this year that you can take, that you can bring on to the next year?
I think the biggest thing for me is the hype train on some of these guys. For me, it's a lot of these players, not only in this league but in Jake's league as well. I took them off of that second year, third year breakout kind of hype, where they have everything looks the right way. It looks good. Damian Pierce, right? The guy was supposed to get volume central. Obviously, they get C.J. Stroud in there, and it's a little bit different than anybody projected. Obviously, Garrett Wilson, you can't project Aaron Rodgers getting hurt in the first couple plays of the game. But it's just taking more of what you know than what you project. You know what I mean? Obviously, yeah, you want to have projections. You want to have people that you're gonna anticipate breakout seasons. There's no question about it. But you can't just gamble on a whole roster of guys who you expect or who you think, because you're going to value those players higher than pretty much anybody else, because in your mind you already put it in your mind that this guy's going to go off, right? But other people in your league, when they do, have a little bit of a down couple games, people aren't going to value those players like you do. So the trade value on those guys that they're not hitting, it's especially hard to trade. And so stay true to more of the go-to fantasy names. I'm not saying you got to get these old guys that every single season, but you want to have name recognition, because even if they're failing, you can still trade that name. Where you have these newer players where you don't have that name recognition and they're on a downward spiral. Nobody's going to want to gamble on it. People like Jake just said, people will trade for Josh Jacobs because even though Josh Jacobs is struggling, he has the name, right? So just pay attention to that. Make sure your roster's evenly constructed as well as it can be, and don't fall for that offseason hype. Like I did it across the board on both leagues. Justin Fields, this, that, and the other, and it's just I gambled too hard on my predictions. That's really what it came down to.
If I can add on to what Andrew said, because he's exactly right, and I got two perfect examples of that, which happened in this draft. I knew that this year I was like, 49ers offense is going to be great. Brandon Ayuk is always so solid. Debo always gets the recognition. Christian McCaffrey was there, but Ayuk, at least I had him last year in the league. I mean, the dude every game was a solid guy that you could put into a wide receiver 2 or a flex. I would not let myself draft him because it was just this unsexy pick on a team that had McCaffrey and that had Debo Samuel. And I passed on him to draft the hype of Darren Waller, where if before draft season you asked anybody before Darren Waller and all that stuff moved to the Giants, like what do you think of Darren Waller? The guy's injury prone. You can't trust him. You can't rely on him. But all I did was listen to this offseason hype about how great Darren Waller looked in preseason and all this and that. And I passed on somebody that I knew I should have taken him. But it was like, I can get Darren Waller. I want to try and get Darren Waller. And then it's like Andrew just said, I held on to this guy that was not doing anything because of name recognition and because he was Darren Waller and he was supposed to be good, and I drafted him high and I wouldn't let him go when it was like I could have sold him and got something for him. And I didn't do it. And then, of course, injuries and all that stuff. But even if he didn't get injured, nobody was buying that ticket. And for what I was wanting to sell him, because it was my 6th round pick, so what Andrew said is exactly right. You need to go with what you know and not always the hype. And we like Justin Fields. We knew the guy couldn't throw the football. His production came from the run game and all that stuff. And you're banking on that record-breaking season for where he was drafted, but dude can't throw the football. We all knew that, and I bit on my league and drafted him too. I was with Andrew in that. So,
yeah, I mean the hype of DJ Moore going there, okay, he has a solid number 1, this, that, and the other. He's got some playmakers around him. It makes it easy to fall for the bait, But at the end of the day, you look back at it and you think, oh, dude, I could have had just an
still
average
a gamble.
Dude, you could have took Dak. I'm not saying Dak perfect, but I mean, you could have easily had Dak in that same spot, which I think they were maybe a round or two apart as far as ADP. So
I think Dak was like 8 or 9 round, I think. But yeah, you're right.
So
I'm gonna have to agree with you both. I think what I've learned this year is that when times change, you have to learn how to change with it. For some reason, my prediction with the Jets mess was a good prediction. I just didn't foresee the Aaron Rodgers thing. But in our league, I bought the freaking Dalvin Cook ticket for some odd reason. I just felt that because I've been a hater on Dalvin Cook, and now I finally have a chance to get him. I think in a unique situation, they went and got him. And I'm just thinking Dalvin Cook is going to answer a lot of my problems this year. And my God. So don't use your early rounds to go after your man crush. That's for damn sure. I know it's better than that, but I still did it. Okay, but yes, definitely, I agree with you, Jake. When times change, you gotta change with it. Particularly with your league, Jake. I went running back, running back. When all this, we've discussed it all year long, how it really is irrelevant now, and that shows. That I know that the running backs that I got still didn't produce anywhere close to they have in the past, but still, it just shows that that strategy is not the best anymore, and so I'm gonna have to learn how to do. If I want something different, which is a playoff appearance, I'm gonna have to do something different. And so I want to ask you guys who you think is crowned the fantasy king this year. I know there's always who scores the most points, but we don't like we all draft differently. The home run hitter or person who goes consistently. So I want to start it off with you, Drew. Who do you think is crowned the 2023 Fantasy King?
So, I did a little research on this, and I went off of percentage players rostered in playoffs, basically. So, whoever has the most rostered player in a playoff percentage based off of Yahoo, which not everybody plays on Yahoo, but it's going to give you, a decent opportunity to realize what we got here. Where is it? Give me 1 second. Now I can't find it. Give me a second here. Of course. Yahoo. Gosh, I want to screenshot it. I will get right back to you guys. Jake, go ahead and I'll get to this list.
Okay. Fantasy MVP, I got two trains of kind of thought with this. Like, the fantasy MVP, clearly Christian McCaffrey has been fantastic. Tyreek Hill has been fantastic. Those would be my two. Based on the way I feel like most leagues are set up, with the bonuses for 40 and 50-yard touchdowns, Tyreek Hill has a good handful of those. So you're not only getting the points for the yardage and the touchdown, but you're getting a lot of bonus points for Tyreek Hill, as opposed to Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, he gets a lot of 100-yard games and all that stuff, but I don't know how many touchdowns over 40 and 50 yards Tyreek has. Those points, I know in my league, Nick's league, a lot of other leagues, there's a lot of bonuses for that. So Tyreek would be my fantasy MVP. But as far as most valuable pick, it has to be Raheem Mostert, because you got that guy in double-digit rounds, and you've got the number 2 running back in fantasy football. The number 2 running back in fantasy football, somebody picked up in 10, 11, 9, 10, 11th round. So he's probably, with that, depending on how you define the MVP of fantasy, whoever had Raheem Mostert has the most valuable player in fantasy football. But Tyreek was the home run guy, because Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Austin Eckler, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard, all these first-round picks. If you hit with Tyreek Hill in the first round, dude, you're loving life. So, but Raheem Mostert would be the most valuable pick, in my opinion.
Before we bring it back to you, Drew, I want to mention that's Mario drafted Tyreek Hill. He's first in the league. And also our number one point scorer, Nick, who did make a comment here, he wants to make sure that we highlight that he still scored the number 1 points in the league, even though he drafted Mahomes 3rd overall. So he just wants to point out there, gotta give him a shout out. But Drew, go ahead. I apologize.
So to actually go back to Jake's point, it's funny that you talked about those two players. Those two players are actually the most rostered players in playoffs.
That's crazy.
Yeah, Raheem Mostert is 62%. So if you have him, you're basically in the playoffs. Tyreek Hill is 41. McCaffrey is going to be 37. I think this person, I talked about him when we were off-season hyping players and people that are forgetting about him. I mentioned Mike Evans, and he's been, other than last week he was dog shit, but he's been a flat out stud. He's on 33% of rosters. Keenan Allen, Josh Allen, Devon A-Chain, obviously. He had those huge weeks. DJ Moore, and this one's kind of surprising is Adam Thielen. I think a lot of people wrote him off. He went to Carolina, and he's the only guy over there, so he was getting all the targets. Just a couple more. Travis Etienne's obviously in there with his season. Alvin Kamara came back and just let the world fire. And then George Kittle's also in there because he has just huge, breakout games every once in a while. And then CeeDee Lamb's down there as well. But yeah, obviously these guys, they're middle of the round. A lot of these guys are middle of the round guys, but they boomed. Obviously you have a couple of huge hits like Jake said. You have Raheem Mostert and Devon A-Chain, both those guys, where they're just any chance you can get, they take it to the house. I remember crystal clear in 2019. I was at the NFC Championship game, and every time Raheem Mostert got the ball, it went for 209 yards against Green Bay. It was insane. The guy's a home run hitter, and the only thing that's ever been the problem with him is health. If he's healthy, the dude's a monster, and proof's in the pudding this year. Like he's a home run hitter all the time.
Who's your MVP of fantasy? In your opinion?
I still think. I'm biased, but I like Mike Evans. He's been there all the time. I think he got double-digit touchdowns. I'm assuming.
He's your late value guy, or he's your fantasy king?
No, he's my MVP, because if you have him or Raheem Mostert, like Jake was saying, you're in the playoffs pretty much, and you're able to get Mike Evans, and he's probably your third to fourth receiver on your team. And it's like, dude, to have somebody that's going to be basically like a top 5, top 10 fantasy receiver, that's just makes your life so much easier. Bye weeks, this, that, and the other. You know what I mean? Like, say you took CD and Mike Evans, like, bro, like you're stacked. You know what I mean? And not to mention, you probably have decent running backs. So having Mike Evans there, and like I said, it doesn't matter who his quarterback is. The dude just gets it done year in, year out. Props up, hats off to Mike Evans.
He's right now. He's the wide receiver 9, in Nick's league. Averages 18 points a game. I have him in one league that's a half-point PPR, and he's definitely won me a few weeks. He definitely has disappeared a few weeks, but yeah, I think I got him in the 6th round in our draft, and and he actually, he gave me I didn't end up making playoffs because I lost Nick Chubb and I lost a few other guys that were my early round picks, but Evans carried me a few weeks, that's for sure.
He has those boomer bust weeks. He's not every week where he's going to get you, but he's a boomer bust player. He's going to win you weeks. There's no question about it.
I feel like Mike Evans is the one receiver in the NFL that doesn't have and I'm talking in comparison to the Mike Williams type, where he doesn't have blazing speed. He's just a contested ball catcher, but he's actually they say oh, the guy's a great contested ball catcher. Well, that like I said a few weeks ago, that's just saying he's slow and can't get separation. But Mike Evans actually is a great contested ball catcher. He'll beat any DB in the league for some of these balls. The guy's insane, which is why he gets hurt a lot. Like, the dude takes a lot of hits, He's a big dude, but he takes a lot of hits because he does, he's always fighting for the ball. So
yeah, he has a big basketball background, so he knows how to box out and do all the other stuff.
Well, like I said, the fact that we're talking about Mike Evans still is a testament to your fantasy managing skills, Andrew. We have that in the beginning of the season. You're talking about Mike Evans as a late round receiver that no one's going to get. You probably got him in the 7th, 8th round. But here we are. If he was on your team, he's helping you into the playoffs and helping you win a championship. So
10 touchdowns on the year. So
like I said, awesome. Hats off to you. When I think of the fantasy football king, I think of who's the most reliable, when I take a pick on you in the 1st round and who's going to come through. And especially with all this talk about the running back situation, obviously with receivers, it's so deep. I think you can find somebody to fill in. I'm not saying that someone like Tyreek Hill or CeeDee Lamb is irreplaceable, but you cannot replace what Christian McCaffrey is doing. And so I just have to take my hats off to, when Purdy's in, Purdy's out. Christian McCaffrey is your guy. If you drafted him, he's there. But if you combine that pick with Raheem Mostert later, it was nasty, right? But I'm going to turn a different. We're talking about tight ends. For those of us who went early on Kelsey and still went after Andrews and early, there's a tight end out there who went late that's on many championship teams right now, which is Laporta from the Detroit Lions. That dude just went off, and he's one of those guys I get upset about. Like, man, I should have saw not that I should have saw that coming, but I should have at least been anticipating, his talent that late and not buying into the tight end nonsense anymore. And so, like I said, I'm gonna have to reevaluate my whole strategy if I want to have guys like Laporta and Mostert to help me get into the playoff race. And so I want to say thank you guys for this year. It's always fun, fantasy football, and so we'll pay attention now to see who's going to crown it this year. I don't know about you guys, but I'm rooting for Nick. All right, I'm rooting for our fellow host. I want to see him earn his first championship in his league. That would be great. But we want to move on to our ranting segment. We want to move on to this question about what exactly makes an MVP. So please, Nick, Jesus, if you guys are there making comments, please let us know. But because of what happened this week with Tyreek Hill being injured, we just want to kind of figure out what makes an MVP if we can keep talking about this. Obviously history shows the league wants to make it a quarterback. The last defensive player was Lawrence Taylor, right? 30 years ago. So it's only obvious they don't care about, they don't value defensive players the same way. I just saw a meme with Lawrence Taylor saying he doesn't think he would finish a game if he played the game with today's rules. And so, I think that's true, and so, Jake, you were hitting on this a little bit earlier, but what do you think makes the MVP and qualifies you to be an MVP in today's league?
So, when I think of the most valuable player, I think of the most valuable player to that player's team, because if you're saying that it's the most valuable player to the league, what does that really mean? You could say it was Travis Kelce would be the most valuable player to the league because he's dating Taylor Swift and they brought in all this, new fan base or whatever. But that's not what I think of when I think of the most valuable player. I think of it as the most valuable player to a team. And so when I think of that, it's if I'm going to remove a player from a team, what player would have the most impact when that player is gone as opposed to when that player is playing? And me and Nick have kind of been on the same page with this. And I think we saw it last night. When Tyreek Hill is in the game, the Dolphins move the ball any way they want to. They throw the ball, receivers are open. The offensive scheme by Mike McDaniel is great. But when Tyreek Hill comes out of the game, they cannot move the football. And so for me, and I know the NFL loves to give this to quarterbacks. The NFL owners pay these quarterbacks tons of money. But to me this year, the most irreplaceable player on any team in football is Tyreek Hill. And I know I'm going to step into Andrew's side of the yard for a little bit, but if I was to have to pick anybody else to be MVP besides Tyreek Hill, it has to be at this point, we still have games to go, but it has to be Brock Purdy. However, I think that there's probably 10 to 12 quarterbacks in the league that could step into that system and do what Brock Purdy's done and bring the 49ers to where they're at now. And that's not taking anything away from what Brock Purdy has done. What I'm saying is there may be one, maybe two receivers in the league that you could replace Tyreek Hill on the Dolphins and have them in the same position now. Tyreek Hill is having an incredible year. He's going to break all kinds of records. And honestly feel like the Dolphins would not be anywhere close to where they're at now if it wasn't for Tyreek Hill. So my MVP of the league is Tyreek Hill at this point. I just feel like there's no other single player that makes as much of an impact on his team as Tyreek Hill.
Drew?
I mean, it's a fair point. I mean, like I said, I mean, we go off historically based stuff, right? And so when I brought that stuff up yesterday or last week about Brock Purdy and all the stats I mentioned, um, you know, nobody gets the MVP just by themselves. You know, like you have a team around you that does it, and you know, a lot of people, you know, they talk about Brock Purdy and they mention kind of like what Jake says, like, oh, like other players can do what he does, this, that, and the other. Like the dude reads the field unbelievably well, and he makes the right passes. The dude doesn't throw interceptions. It's very, very rare that he throws interceptions. And if he does, he normally responds pretty well. I get it, you know, the Niners defense and Kyle Shanahan and the offense and the big players that they have, the home run hitters, but the dude makes the right throws. The dude makes the right reads. He gets the balls into the right players' hands. And yeah, Debo occasionally will bust a couple big plays, but the outside noise that, oh, he's just a slants and screens guy, that's all he does. It's complete BS. Look at the numbers, dude. Like they don't lie. You know, you can have your opinions and you can say what you want to say, but the numbers don't lie. And the person
he had some beautiful deep throws the last game. I mean, on the money, you know, in stride, which was honestly the first game I've really like noticed that with him. But I mean, beautiful deep throws down the field. There were not slants and screens. He had some beautiful deep balls. You know, sorry to cut you off, but I had to bring that up.
You're totally fine. I mean, talk about Brandon Ayuk as a breakout player, as a person who's putting himself in elite territory. And yeah, Brandon Ayuk runs amazing routes. He's probably one of the top 5 best route runners in the league. The dude is unbelievable. But the faith in the way that Brock Purdy slings the ball, and I don't want to say this is like, oh, just to hype him up more, but like everybody's been saying it, it's Joe Montana like the dude puts the ball to the place. He doesn't he threads the needle almost every time. The guy's not even close to finishing his route and the ball's already out. But the biggest comparison, and Christian Garcia, Nick's brother, who's in our league, he mentioned it. He's a lot like Kurt Warner back in the day with the 2000s Rams. He had Isaac Bruce. He had Torrey Holt. Guess what? Both those guys are in the Hall of Fame. He had Marshall Faulk. Guess what? He's in the Hall of Fame. But nobody knocked Kurt Warner when Kurt Warner was slinging it because he was doing it, you know? And so when he mentioned that to me, I really was like, damn, I think we can all kind of like shake our heads.
Okay.
That's exactly.
That's a fantastic point. But I think this needs to hit on the whole fact of, you know, if you're there now. I'm sorry if I cut you off.
No, you're good.
Okay. Here's what I think. Now, I want to ask you this quiz, Drew. Okay. Do the Niners this season, can they still win the Super Bowl without Brock Purdy?
No.
Honestly.
With Sam Darnold?
What's that?
With Sam Darnold being the quarterback?
I'm asking you, do they have a chance to win the Super Bowl without? Because we've seen it happen already with Carson Wentz coming in with fucking Big Dick Nick, acting like, oh, this is horrible, but it happened because the rest of the team was good. The rest of the team was solid. So I'm asking you, as a Niner fan, you believe, because I believe they can. I think they can win without Brock Purdy. And that's why I think he can't be the MVP. As staggering as his stats are, because I'm shocked by him too. The comparison to Manning and how many games he's had, right, over 700 yards or whatever, right? Like I'm not knocking him, but I do believe the Niners can win without him, and that's why he can't be the MVP.
I don't think. I mean, it also depends on what team comes out of the AFC. If we get to that Super Bowl level, you know, if it's a team like the Chiefs, I think we would have to have a team. We would have to have Brock Purdy. Like Sam Darnold's not. He's not even close to the way that the playmaking and decision making that Brock Purdy has. You know, and I'm not like people can knock, you know, or whatever.
But this offense wasn't designed for Brock Purdy. It was designed for Homie.
I get it. It's for Christian McCaffrey and Debo.
The other quarterback. What was it? We have Trey Lance, right? This whole thing was meant for Trey fucking Lance, and so to say that Sam Darnold can't come in,
we never saw Trey Lance like play more than 10 games. Like that was never really like a thing. Where I mean, you look at Kyle Shanahan, he's been on the Niners since 2014. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
what I'm saying is Brock Purdy wasn't the plan this going in this year.
Well, hold on. Well, that's not true though. Brock Purdy played 7 games last year. Started 7 games. They had an entire offseason and an entire preseason to revamp this offense, knowing that Brock Purdy was going to be the quarterback. So they've had time to make that adjustment, and Brock Purdy's fielding great. I don't think now what you're saying, can they win the Super Bowl without Brock Purdy? If Brock Purdy got hurt today, no, I don't know if they could win the Super Bowl with a quarterback that is on their roster right now. I don't know that. I think that they would still make a splash in the playoffs, just because of that offensive line and McCaffrey and the defense. But what I was saying earlier, and this is not taking away from Brock Purdy, but I think there's 12 quarterbacks in the league right now that especially if we're healthy, that you could plug in besides Brock Purdy. I'm talking Matt Stafford, Kirk Cousins. Sam Howell has the second most passing yardage in the league. Dak Prescott, Justin Herbert, fucking Joe Burrow. There is probably 12 quarterbacks in the league right now that you could plug into this system and have the same success as Brock Purdy. This is not taking anything away from what he's done. What I'm saying is it's again, and it goes back to this argument of system quarterbacks and just elite talent. Brock Purdy, I think, is a mix of both at this point. I think is where he's at. But again, like the one thing that really sticks out to me is just as far as passing attempts, the 49ers are second lead in the league right now in passing attempts. And it's just because they're always ahead because of their defense, and they're always running the ball. They don't have to throw the ball. It's not saying that Brock Purdy has not been fantastic when he has to, but he's rarely had to. And so can the 49ers go to the Super Bowl without Brock Purdy, given the who's behind them? Sam Darnold? Probably not. But could the 49ers go to the Super Bowl with a lot of other quarterbacks, given the talent on the team? I would say yes to about 12 quarterbacks in the league.
Awesome. Well, we're just going to see how this pans out. Jesus wants to make a comment. He goes, we don't know if the Niners can win a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy. So he thinks it's a crap question.
They're the best team in the league, and it's not even close. Not even close.
But it's going to be interesting.
They're so good.
It's going to get interesting, though, with Dak Prescott and the Cowboys and what they're doing. Maybe the Eagles bounce back. They've been a little suspect last 2 weeks. But to end the show, we got to talk about it. We got to talk about what's been happening. And we talk about it every year, it seems. And all of a sudden, these flags start coming out. So, Andrew, was it offsides?
Yes.
And does Pat Mahomes deserve to cry the way that he's crying?
It was offsides. One of the guys on ESPN, Dan Orlovsky, he actually had a little segment on this issue, and he mentioned it. Kadarius Toney, there was multiple times in that game where Kadarius Toney was lined up offsides, and it's one of those things where it's like, dude, not any, but a lot of the receivers in today's game, they'll still look at the line judge, throw his arm out there, and be like, hey, am I good? And those line judges will always, whatever. Like they have their back. I mean, they're gonna work with you. They're not dicks. Like I've seen maybe one occasion where, and this was actually a big topic, I think, last season.
Yeah.
One of the players looked at him, pointed at him, was he good? And the ref nodded, and then the ref threw the flag. I remember that last season, or maybe early, whatever it was. But historically, like those refs are gonna help you, dude. They're there. They're not going to be dicks. Like they're to help you out. So, but Kadarius Toney, not a single time in that game, looked at the line judge, pointed at him, and was like, "Am I good?" And like I said, there was the proof's in the pudding. Like, there's multiple occasions where he's lined up off sides, and it's, so I mean, I get why they threw it, and it is what it is. I mean, dude, hats off to Travis Kelce. That play was incredible when you're watching it live. To be able to stop basically with 360 throw, and it's like a spiral into Kadarius Toney's hands, and he does the prime time high stepping in the end zone. Come to find out you're a donkey, like every single Chiefs receiver that pretty much is out there right now. You got to feel for Patrick Mahomes, dude. It has to be super upsetting. I mean, the guy is. It reminds me, and I know this is a different sport, but it reminds me like Kobe, like in like the 2015, 2016, like when the teams just sucked. Like it was Kobe and who, and it's kind of like how it is right now. It's Mahomes and who. Like, yeah, Kelsey's there, of course, but it's like you have no weapons to throw to, and then you throw it to them, they find ways to lose you games. Like MBS lost the game. Like that was in his breadbasket. Tony lost them this game. Like bonehead plays and plays that are just incompetent for receivers. Like incompetent receivers make these plays. You know what I mean? And it's like that's exactly what he has. He just has a plethora of not talented players around him, and it's starting to get at him. And obviously now with the Travis Kelce and the Taylor Swift thing, there's way more attention than there ever was. I mean, there always is a huge amount of attention. We're the best quarterback in the league, but you add that into it, I think it's starting to spiral on him a little bit, and he's kind of, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, obviously, I'd never count out the Chiefs and Mahomes. They're going to win the AFC West. They're going to get in the playoffs, and I'm sure they're going to make a deep run. And that defense does look pretty good, and Isaiah Pacheco has, I think, surprised a lot of people this year with how good he is. But the talent around him to throw to is not there. And it's one of those things where I feel like there's not a the AFC. There's nobody that's like, oh, they're the shit. That team right there, make it.
Jacob, do you feel for Patrick Mahomes?
Okay. I'm just going to say this. And Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, when you guys see this, I hope you take to heart what I'm about to say. I don't feel for either of you one little bit. I don't care that your receivers have been terrible. You let Tyreek walk. Eric Bieniemy is gone. Your guys' superstar offense, you just let walk out the door. Okay? The Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes have been profiting from getting call after judgment call after judgment call. Anytime somebody breathes on Mahomes wrong, it's a flag. The NFL and the referees have given no team a shot the last few years to even touch Kansas City. I mean, they have been the benefactor of so many bullshit calls over the years. And for them to cry, this is an NFL wide receiver. Go watch a Pop Warner game. Go watch a high school game. Go watch a college game. Every receiver looks at the line of scrimmage judge across the field to figure out if they're offsides or not. You were not just a little bit offsides, okay? Your foot, and it's clear on the TV, your foot was over the blue line. The tip of the ball was on the other side of the blue line. It wasn't even close, okay? The fact that you can get mad that they made this call, okay? You're an NFL wide receiver making millions of dollars, okay? You can't catch. You can't run a route, okay? You can't stay healthy, Kadarius Toney. What can you do? You can make sure you're at least lined up on the right side of the fucking football. I mean, they call it all the time on the defense, and I understand that offensive offsides hasn't been called, and then they're trying to bring it back, whatever. But you were offsides. Like if that play ended and Von Miller for the Bills was offsides and sacked Mahomes, and they didn't call it, you would. I mean, this call would not even be getting the kind of publicity that it is if it wasn't Patrick Mahomes. And he threw a fit and embarrassed himself, and Andy Reid embarrassed himself. It's just a joke. You lost the fucking game. Your team isn't that good. You're probably not going to go to the Super Bowl. Like, that's just it. It's just it. Like, get the fuck over it, Patrick Mahomes. Every quarterback goes through it. 1 or 2 years in your great years. You're not going to have a Super Bowl run. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, they all go through it. This is your year. Your team isn't that good. Revamp your wide receivers next year. You guys got too cocky, think you could bring in Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Kadarius Toney, and you guys could replace Tyreek Hill. No, you can't. You suck. I mean, that's just it. It was offside. The flag was called. The game's over. That's it.
Wow. Excellent. Thank you, Jake, for laying that out there pretty thick. I agree with you. Last year we featured a show basically scripting how the flags would be thrown for the Chiefs at the end of the season. And it didn't happen that particular week, but it happened against the Eagles. It happened exactly the way we fucking said it, right? And so, how dare Patrick Mahomes? How dare Patrick Mahomes to be the leader and to be the face of the court in the league? How dare he go on this tantrum about this call? Because we have
watched handfuls of games over the last 5 years where the referees have marched with their yellow flags. They have marched Kansas City down and down and down the field and down the field, and then the Chiefs score and nobody fucking blinks. And it's all judgment calls. The thing is this wasn't like a pass interference call or a holding call where it's up to the referee's judgment. This is like a disciplinary call. He's offsides. It's not like up for discussion. He's offsides.
Correct. I agree. And I love to end it with that, man. That was awesome because I would agree, you know. But we want to keep it open. We want to keep it open for next week. Thank you guys for joining us this week, and we're going to cover our fantasy league championships and make sure we find out who's going to be in the championships. Right, go Nick. But we will be here next week, guys, to end the fantasy football season for the next few weeks. But I want to say thank you, Nick, thank you, Drew. Thank you, Drew, thank you, Jake, for joining us, and we will be back next week at 6 p.m. live. All right. So with that said, all right. Peace be the journey.
Yeah, you gotta chop up that. You gotta chop up that Kadarius Toney rant. Put that on a short. That was fun.
That's epic. That was epic. I really hope that Andy Reid and Patrick Holmes see that. We gotta find a way to get that to
Tag
them.
them all.
Peace out, guys. That was awesome.